I paid for the fuel and walked out, my town car waiting for me by the pump. I don't care what anyone says. Driving will always be my choice over flying when it comes to cross-country travel. There's just something about cruising on two-lane interstates through the badlands of the US that I've always liked. Maybe it was the freedom I felt with it. Just me, the car, and the open road. With the windows down and the radio turned up, I was the happiest I could ever be. And since I had to travel quite frequently for business trips and whatnot, this had become a regular feeling for me. I got in the car and started the engine, chills running over me as the V8 growled to life. I pulled out to the edge of the parking lot and stopped, looking down the desolate road. You could see it disappear into the desert miles ahead, almost as if it was going straight to the edge of the earth. I was on the last leg of my return trip home to Las Vegas from a company conference in Seattle. The whole drive there and back had been nothing short of perfection. Clear skies, great music, warm weather, and, of course, the feeling of complete isolation from the rest of the world. I had also stayed in cheap but rather nice roadside motels, a nice break from the congested and noisy city life I was all too familiar with, but unfortunately I had to go back to. It was mid-afternoon now. I had started the day in a little motel near the Utah-Nevada border and planned to be back home that night. I couldn't think of a better day to end the trip on. I pushed down on the accelerator and turned onto the road, the town car slowly picking up speed. I let it get to roughly 70 miles per hour before leveling off and turning on cruise control. I had packed some CDs for this trip as well, my favourite being the Hollies album Distant Light. I popped the disc into the CD player and rolled down all the windows. The music started and I kicked back and relaxed behind the wheel, letting the groove of Long Cool Woman take me as the warm desert air rushed into the car and mountains passed. I drove like this for the rest of the day, only stopping for fuel or the occasional snack at the roadside diner. The sense of space and freedom I felt was otherworldly. I'd only passed a handful of other cars and only one cop at the side of the road. I truly felt at home. Once night fell, however, I turned off the radio and focused more on the road. I didn't want to hit any animals, and Las Vegas wasn't too far off now. I had about 2.5 hours to go, but even still, there were absolutely no cars around me. I guessed that no one else really had any reason to be out here. But that's when I saw them. 2 headlights had appeared in my rearview mirror from seemingly out of nowhere, and they were coming up really fast. I figured it was just a speed freak or a teenager out for a joyride away from the crowd. I expected them to just overtake me and speed off down the road. But they didn't. I watched as the car sped up behind me and began riding my bumper, so close I couldn't read its license plate. I glanced at the headlights and noticed the car was also quite old. It looked like one of those late 50s or early 60s Cadillacs. I should know, as my father had one when I was a kid, and every summer we would go on a road trip with it. This is probably where my love for cross-country car travel began. This person was still tailgating me though. Thinking they just wanted to be an asshole, I switched lanes to let them go by, as the interstate had now become 4 lanes, with 2 going different directions. As I did this, however, the Cadillac followed me, still riding my bumper. Now I was worried. Did this person want something, or did they have some kind of problem? I was startled out of my mind when I heard the car lay on its horn and saw it rapidly flashing its brights. I picked up my phone to call the police, but it was dead and the charger was in my suitcase in the trunk. There was no way I was pulling over now, so I shut off my lights and stomped on the gas. My car took off like a rocket, leaving the Cadillac far behind. As I sped away, I kept checking my mirrors, expecting to see that car chasing after me. But it was gone. I turned the lights back on and was now on full alert. That person was obviously crazy, but seemed to have gotten bored of me and turned around. I'll admit, I started feeling a sense of relief as I saw the stars begin to fade. I had only about half an hour of driving left until I was back in familiar territory. Even though I was starting to forget about the previous events, I was still eager to get back to civilization. Bit by bit, the sky grew brighter and brighter. However, the road was still empty. I thought this was rather odd, but didn't have any time to think about it as my car suddenly jolted forward by a rear-end collision. It swerved for a moment before I got it back under control. I looked in the rearview mirror to see what had caused the impact, and my eyes opened so wide they burned. It was the same Cadillac from earlier. Now it was actually ramming me. I knew the town car was a heavy vehicle capable of taking quite a beating, but I wanted this nightmare to end. I put the accelerator to the floor and started racing way over the speed limit. This time the Cadillac kept up and it hit me once again. What the hell was this person's problem? I spun the steering wheel and jerked over to the side of the road. The Cadillac followed suit and hit me a third time. I finally realized that it was trying to run me off the road. My phone remained dead, and no matter what I tried, this maniac was always on my tail. At that moment, I realized what I had to do. I went back to the right side of the road and the Cadillac followed, this time pulling alongside me. Now I could see the car with more detail. It was jet black and had no license plates, and the windows were as dark as a starless night, obstructing any view inside. I looked at it angrily and let out a scream. I threw the steering wheel to the left with everything I had. My car collided with the Cadillac, its weight causing the car to spin out of control into the ditch. I didn't stop. I didn't want to face whoever or whatever was in that thing. I kept going, not daring to slow down. I was flying down the road, not caring if a cop pulled me over. Just then, I saw the lights of Las Vegas appear over the mountains in front of me. I was nearly there. I began to slow down as I neared the bridge. It was a very long bridge that went over a deep ravine on the very outskirts of the city. I just didn't want any more trouble tonight, so I slowed back down to the speed limit upon approaching the bridge. Past it, the road started to become a bit more populated with a few cars here and there. I felt a huge wave of relief at that moment, but was snapped out of it when I heard the roar of an engine next to me. I only had a second to look at the Cadillac flying across the interstate before it T-boned me, sending me spinning into the rocks at the side of the road. I sat there, dazed, all of my airbags deployed. I tried looking outside to see if the Cadillac was still there, but it had vanished. I was in so much pain that I collapsed back into my seat, broken glass littering my lap and the surrounding area. Before I blacked out, however, I heard a low, deep grumble. I glanced outside, and through the smoke and debris, I saw something I'll never get out of my head. The bridge was collapsing. I awoke in the hospital the next day. I had a cast on my left arm and left leg. By this point, I wasn't in very much pain, but the scene from last night was still fresh in my mind. Next to my bed stood a doctor and a cop. The doctor told me I was in remarkably good condition despite the crash. Though I had fallen unconscious, broken bones were going to be the worst of it now. The cop then asked to be alone with me in the room. When the doctor left, he started asking me about what happened. I told him everything, from the old Cadillac to being chased and rammed multiple times. The cop took some notes, then told me my belongings had been successfully removed from the car, but the car itself had been totaled in the collision. He also said that insurance would cover the expenses and a search was being initiated to find the suspect. Before the cop left, he told me I was actually extremely lucky that I wasn't on the bridge when it collapsed, or I absolutely would have died. This was apparently the second time the bridge had failed. The first time was 4 years ago. I remembered that. The story had spread like wildfire across the country nearly overnight. Officials were now looking into the cause of both disasters. The cop left the room, leaving me all alone. I looked out the nearby window and saw the sun in the sky over the Eiffel Tower. I was back in Las Vegas. Just then, I glanced over to the TV next to me and saw the crumbled bridge on the news. It mentioned that unlike the first time around, there were no casualties, just a car crash nearby, leaving one vehicle destroyed. Mine. They also said that no signs of a second vehicle could be found anywhere, but that an investigation was now officially underway. What happened next is something I'm still trying to cope with to this day. The news showed a few pictures of the first time the bridge fell in, and there was one casualty. A 73-year-old man by the name of Gerald Henderson had been out for a drive when he went over the bridge. It gave way and the old man was killed in the fall. The news then showed a picture of Gerald's mangled car being pulled out of the ravine, and my blood froze. The car in the picture was an old black Cadillac, the exact same one that I encountered last night.